With the addition of Laiatu Latu in the NFL draft, the Indianapolis Colts boast their most talented defensive line in the Chris Ballard era. But what does the Latu pick mean for the other pass rushers on the team? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm joined here by my fellow analyst and co-host of the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, Drake Wally. Drake, the draft been a week, I should say, since the NFL draft. We've been able to digest the picks, really see how these guys fit in to the Indianapolis Colts roster. And now you start to think, what does this mean, not only for the players, but for the position groups that they were added to? And like I said, in my opinion, this is the most talented defensive line group that the Colts have had since Chris Ballard became the general manager. They've always wanted to go 8 or 9 strong, but bringing Latu in, that means some other guys are going to have decreased roles.
Yeah, and it's also, probably the biggest reason is because he is a first round pick.
Mm-hmm.
And a number 15 overall selection at that, the first defensive player taken. There's a lot riding on getting this guy, and not taking a cornerback or not taking a wide receiver. Taking Latu means he's going to need to be out there. So who knows, man? I'm pretty excited to see what his role is going to be. I'm also pretty excited to see how he's going to work with the rest of these guys and Charlie Partridge. Man, you just cannot overlook the multitude that this brings to an already pretty intimidating Colts defensive front that really hasn't even hit their ceiling yet. And they set the Indy era sack record last season. So you just need more consistency. You need more pass pressure on the quarterbacks. And why not grab a guy who was one of the best at doing it last season? He's been a terror the last 2 years in football. I love it, man. But like you said, somebody's going to lose snaps over this. Probably somebody's.
Yeah, exactly. So tonight, that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to talk about Laiatu Latu's impact on the defensive line. We're going to talk about, how it impacts some other guys. Where exactly is Latu going to line up in this defense, do we think? Then what about Kwity Paye, Dio Dangbo, Samson Ebukam? How does it affect those guys in the rotation? Or does it affect those guys at all? So it's going to be a really fun episode, really fun debate tonight. Definitely want to hear all of your guys' opinions in the chat as well. Truitt is in the house, as he even says it. Truitt's in the house. Thank you for joining us. Sean Contwright is here. He says, "Hey guys, happy re-signed Paye. Think he's going to keep getting better." So yes, Kwity Paye, the Colts did pick up his 5th-year option. We're certainly going to talk about that later in the show. The third host is here, Stats Matt. What's up? Still doing some stat research. So you'll see some good stats, Matt, stats of the day here. Really excited about that. And then 912_ Colts fan. What's up, guys? I really love this pick after letting it set in. I think a lot of Colts fans feel the same way. So everyone, as everyone joins us here tonight, please go follow us on all of our socials. Like I say at every episode, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, and for special breaking news episodes so you never miss us. But if you can't catch us live, we're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. And guys, if you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, you guys can also hear Drake and I special audio only episodes. Yes, we do audio only episodes. They're called Horseshoe Huddle Halftime. Just quick 20-minute episodes that come out around lunchtime every Wednesday. Just talking about different topics that we don't necessarily talk about on the YouTube channel. So definitely go and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. So Drake, let's dive into it, buddy. Let's talk about Laiatu Latu's impact on the Colts pass rusher. And I think a really good place to start when really trying to dissect how he is going to impact this, not only this defensive line, but he's going to impact the other rushers, is we got to talk about his skill set. And we did kind of talk about this on the last episode, but it's always good to refresh before we really dive in, so that way we can make our points tonight. And it's always good, especially with how new of a player a lot of fans are still trying to figure out what's up with Laiatu Latu and what he brings to this Colts team. So take it away, Drake. What is Laiatu Latu's skill set? Just give us the quick scouting report on the Colts first round pick this year. Hope you're on mute.
That almost never happens, man. Incredibly explosive off the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible bend. You're going to hear me say this a lot. Stronger than what his frame would indicate, I would say. Just an outrageously talented pass rusher. Puts a lot of pressure on QBs, gets the guys to hurry on their throws. He's insanely athletic. And I know that we always get that, or we get that, every year with the draft. This guy had 2 interceptions in a season, meaning he just plucked the ball right out from the throw from like a pretty short distance, probably jumping with a lineman in his face. I mean, this guy is outrageously talented, incredibly versatile. I do think you need to work. He's going to have to work on his run defense, but his run defense is not as bad as you would think. I think that he's so good at pass rushing that you see some tape of him getting blown off the line of scrimmage. That happens, man, to a guy who's more of a pass rushing specialist, but he's still decent in the run. I just think that that's why you want to keep a guy like Kwity Paye, is because you don't just want a strict pass rushing specialist, especially for some reason Latu can't grab onto the ground game. So I think that there's just a lot here, man. I think that your skill set is incredibly. He's really smooth. Charlie Partridge is going to love watching a guy and grooming a guy that has the bend that he does. He's just going to outpace a lot of these tackles, and he's just so damn quick. So I think that all those things combined, along with the tutelage that he's going to receive at the NFL level, along with the teammates he's going to work with, Andrew, I think the Colts are getting a hell of a player here.
Yeah, they really are, and Chris Ballard talked about it, in their opinion, the Colts got the best pass rusher in the draft. Latu comes in at 6'5", 259 pounds. The thing that really has stood out throughout this entire process about Laiatu Latu is just how polished he is as a pass rusher, and that's what makes him so unique as well, compared to the rest of the Colts pass rushers that have been selected over the past few years, because typically the Colts like to go with guys that are elite level athletes that have all the traits, but they're not necessarily there. They're pretty raw. They still need to develop those pass rushing moves, need to develop counters, have a plan. Latu already comes with that, and he already is a high level athlete. He had a 9.37 RAS, I think, or somewhere at least close to that. He comes in and he doesn't have 1, he doesn't have 2, but he has at least 3 really good moves, really good pass rushing moves in his repertoire. He comes in and he has a plan. He even talked about it. I like to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. I like it so that way when I'm in those situations, it's more like muscle memory where the moves just kind of take over and I don't really have to think about those sorts of things. So, and that's why even though he missed 2 years of football because of being forced to medically retire, he was still playing rugby, he was still staying active, and he was working on his pass rush moves by himself. He was continuing to drill, continuing to grind and work on his craft. That's that obsession with your position, obsession with football, obsession to get better, that Shane Steichen always preaches, the types of guys he wants, not only at the quarterback position like we talked about last year with Anthony Richardson, but it goes to pass rusher, it goes to offensive line, goes to running back, wide receiver, wherever. You want to have guys that are just absolutely obsessed with that craft. And that's why when he was able to come back, and play football at UCLA, number one, the medical, he didn't miss a single game after he came back. So it doesn't seem like that is an issue. And all he did was put together 2 incredible years at UCLA, with 23 and a half sacks, 34 tackles for loss at UCLA. 5 pass deflections. He had 5 forced fumbles, and you mentioned it, those 2 interceptions. So, he has the full package, and that's why the Colts were so ecstatic to get a player like Laiatu Latu at number 15. Let's talk about this. I think this really fits perfectly in this conversation, Drake, as our first stat of the day. Here's the repeated stats that he has: 23 and a half sacks, 34 tackles for loss at UCLA, like I mentioned, 64 pressures in 2022, and 62 pressures in 2023, which equal to a 21.5 pressure percentage. So literally 1 out of every 5 snaps, Laiatu Latu was getting pressure on the quarterback. Both years are top 10 of all defensive ends in the last 3 seasons, and he was the first ranked defensive end in pass rush win rate in 2023 at 23.1% and 7th in 2022. So the kid's just getting better, Drake. He's putting consistent pressure on the quarterback, which is something the Colts need, and if you guys remember last year, and I think, Drake, we even talked about this specifically, towards the end of the year, a lot of teams, because the Colts were having so much success rushing the passer, they just put extra guys in there and had that max protect for a lot of the last little bit of the year to really stifle this Colts pass rush, and it allowed those quarterbacks to start to pick apart the defense. So you bring in a guy like Laiatu Latu who can get past that max protect and still put pressure on the quarterback, and that solves your problem right there.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think in that situation, if you're really trying to hit a quarterback with a lot of pressure, I mean, you've got plenty of firepower. This is even before the Latu pick to do that for the Colts. But now that you're bringing him in, it just really has the potential to take the top off the potential of the entire defensive front, which, as we saw at times, man, they really look absolutely polished as hell. And I think that this might be what they needed, along with the coaching change, which has already been made. So I'm pumped, man. I think Latu has a really good place in this defense led by Gus Bradley, but more importantly, man, are 2 things. I'm excited to see him with the rest of the defensive front the Colts have. And I'm even more pumped to see what Charlie Partridge is going to do with him, because you're talking about a guy that's one of the best in college football, and he's getting a rookie that has the potential to be one of the top 10 pass rushers in the NFL.
Another stat by Stats Matt wanted to add a new one. Latu was the highest rated prospect of all positions by PFF since PFF was founded in 2014. And you guys know PFF, we say it all the time, PFF is not the Bible, but it's certainly a good tool to use. The highest rated prospect of all positions by PFF since PFF was founded in 2014. That blows my mind. Fantastic get there by Stats Matt. So Drake, talking about his skill set and his pass rushing acumen and his ability, well, some people say, he probably could improve as a run defender, but it's not like he's the worst run defender in college football. It's not like he's Unique Ngakoue, who was almost unplayable against the run when he was a member of the Colts. So this kind of it's kind of interesting to talk about where does Laiatu Latu fit on this Colts defense, because in the Gus Bradley defense, if you didn't know, there's 2 different defensive end positions. One is called the Leo, which is a guy that the player is usually a little bit undersized, usually gets out in that wide 9 stance, and his sole purpose is to really just pin his ears back, go get the football. That's what Samson Ebukam, his position last season. It was where Unique Ngakoue played in 2022. Now the other position that you talk about is called the big end position. Those guys are more they still need to be really good at rushing the passer, but those are your defensive ends that are more focused on setting the edge. You need to have a good run defender there. So that's where Kwity Paye comes in, where he started. Dio Odangbo usually backs up Kwity Paye right there. So when you're thinking about these two different positions and what is required out of them, where does, Drake, in your opinion, where does Latu fit best, as the Leo or as that big end on the other side?
Oh, I think this is a slam dunk to put him at Leo, just because he's got the athleticism, he's got the speed. He's more of a speed rusher. I mean, now, like you said, he's got multiple ways to beat, a blocker. So it's not just outright speed, but he just fits more of that role. His body style, body type kind of fits that role. But like you said, man, him on a pass rushing down, opposite Quiddy Pay, opposite Dio, or if you're talking about just bringing a NASCAR package, you have him and Ebicom or him and Lewis. I mean, that's a lot to deal with, if you're an offense. So I think that he's going to fit right into that Leo spot really well, and I think that his skill set could make him one hell of an addition, on that side for the Colts. Now, I still think that he can obviously work because he's going to be in far more pass rushing situations than run, I think. But offense is going to test him. That's what they're going to test him with, is the ground game. So we'll have to see. He's going to have to learn to plant those damn feet in the ground and not get shoved back, because going against what I said actually earlier, those few clips I've seen of him getting dominated at the line of scrimmage, I mean, there is at least a little cause for concern for that weakness. Otherwise, NFL teams, they'll just run the damn ball down your throat and to your side. So, and that sets up a whole multitude of issues. So I just think that he's going to fit that Leo spot well, though, and he still can defend the run better than some NFL defensive ends, actually, probably right now. So
yeah, and the Leo, this is interesting for me because all your points are fantastic, and I do think that that's probably where he will be in that Leo spot, but he's a little bit big for what the Colts, for what the Leo spot is for, which makes it interesting because at 6'5" and almost 260 pounds, that's a little bit bigger than Quiddy Pay. Even Quiddy Pay, I think, is about 6'3", 260 pounds. So, I mean, when you're trying to get a pass rusher on the field, it really doesn't matter. And you would like to be able to have a guy like Latu out in a wide nine stance, get him one-on-one with a tackle, and let him use that pass rushing repertoire to really go to work. So when you're talking about that, and you're thinking about where he lines up, I really think the Colts are going to use Latu in a variety of different ways. And so I think that his primary position will be in that Leo spot. But, if you get Ebukam and Latu on the field at the same time, then you're probably going to put Latu over at that big end spot. UCLA sometimes had Latu rushing right up the middle. He wasn't down in a 3-point stance like DeForest Buckner would be, but he was kind of standing up in a 2-point stance, and attacking the guard a certain way. So I could see Gus Bradley, Charlie Partridge moving Latu around the formation to try to get him in the best matchup possible. And then in the NASCAR package, where the NASCAR package that all NFL teams talk about and run, you want your fastest, your best pass rushers all out on the field to just go get the quarterback, so in my opinion, what you're probably looking at in that instance is you're probably putting Ebukam as the Leo. You probably got Latu as the big end. You got DeForest Buckner in there at the 3 technique, and then if at your other defensive tackle position, you can move Dio Odango inside there. That's probably what your NASCAR package is going to look like. So it's going to be very, very fun to watch as a guy that loves watching pass rushers. Ever since the days of, for me at least, Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis, I have had an affinity for pass rushing, and just the technical aspect that goes into that, Drake. It's so exciting and so fascinating for me. And that's why I'm such a fan of Laiatu Latu, because of how he is able to use those moves. He sets up his opponent, but I'm getting off track here. But yeah, I do think that he'll probably slide in at the Leo. Will he start over Samson Ebukam? I think that's to be determined, because we got to remember Samson Ebukam led this team in sacks. It was probably their best defensive lineman a year ago. So it's not like the Colts are just going to relegate Ebukam to a reserve role or anything like that. It's going to be really interesting to see who outperforms the other in training camp, how Latu can hang up and really play against the run. I think that'll certainly have an impact on it, because if he does struggle against the run, then he's relegated to more of those strictly pass rush situations until he can get his feet underneath him against the run. So it will be interesting to see how those all line up. But again, I think with Laiatu Latu, because he has the pass rushing acumen, and the size, I think you can put him at both depending on the situation, which is a huge plus, not only for Latu, but for this Colts defense where you're not pigeonholed into having to put him into one specific role.
I was about to say, hell yeah, if you can do that with your first round pick, and you look at the other pieces on that defensive front, and if you can take Latu, who has all this potential, and just move him around, that's absolutely fantastic. And I was about to ask you, so given his size, it's kind of weird. He's right in that middle slot, so he's probably going to play both. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, exactly. So I think he would play both just depending on the situation, because especially it's not like only these guys can play big end. Only these guys can play Leo. I mean, we saw last year Kwity Paye was the primary Leo, or I'm sorry, was the primary big end. He started there, but there were times where Kwity Paye and Dio Dangbo rushed on the same down at defensive end, and Kwity Paye was out at the Leo spot and you put Dio Dangbo as the big end. So it doesn't it's not like they're locked into these specific positions. It's all going to be on matchups, game situation, and that's where the coaching staff really comes in to put these guys in the best position to succeed. And we'll talk about Charlie Partridge here in a bit and how he figures into all of this. But just to be able to have a guy that you can put at multiple positions, that versatility, that's so key, and it just gives the coaching staff more options, and it allows Latu to reach the field more often as well, because he was a fantastic college prospect, but the only way he's going to really get better is getting those valuable live reps on the field. The more reps he gets, the better he's going to be, the quicker he acclimates himself to the NFL game, and the sooner we can see if the Colts can truly unlock that potential that Latu has.
Yeah, and they talked about being more explosive defensively as well. Well, look, man, you've got a guy who really does it all. I mean, he is a complete package, like you said. And obviously, there's going to be things he does less than ideal over things that he does on an absolutely nuclear level. So, I think that this is just a great addition, and regardless of whether they use him in the Leo or the big end, I just think that the potential is there. You're hoping that he can join the likes of the rest of the Colts defensive front with guys like Buckner and Stewart and Ebicom, who were just so fantastic. And one more thing, shout out to Samson Ebicom, like you mentioned, dude was damn near top of the Colts in pass pressure. I think he was only behind DeForest Buckner. I mean, Ebicom is a freak, and they absolutely should not just let someone start over him that's a rookie. They need to figure out a way. If they want to start Latu, they need to figure out a way to get him on the field, but still keep Ebicom on the field as much as possible, because he also defends the run beautifully.
Yeah, and let's talk about those guys, because obviously Latu's coming in and he's going to have an impact and take snaps away from some of these guys. So
Yep.
I want to start out with Kwity Paye, because Kwity Paye in the news today, obviously, and for good reasons. The Colts did pick up the fifth-year option for Kwity Paye, which means he is locked into $13.4 million guaranteed for 2025. Keeps him with the Colts for at least 2 more seasons. So, I'll be completely honest here, Drake. And if you guys listened to till the last episode, I was dead set and confident that the Colts were not going to pick up Kwity Paye's fifth-year option, just because you're going to bring in Latu, and Paye hadn't shown to be that dominant edge presence on that side. And boy, was I wrong. And honestly, as this week has gone on, and you hear more from Chris Ballard, you hear more from Gus Bradley, who spoke to the media as well. The value that they hold for Kwity Paye is immense. It really is, Drake. And Gus Bradley even said, you talk about guys that you need to trust, and you want, they've proven they're worthy of your trust. And he said, that's Kwity Paye. You could trust that Kwity Paye is going to go out there, do his job, and do his job well. So, and I know if you guys have been followers of us for a while now, you guys know I'm a huge fan of Kwity Paye. He's one of my favorite Colts on the team. Love his story, love his work ethic, just love the person that he is. So I'm ecstatic for Kwity Paye. And I think this is good for him, because again, if the way that Kwity Paye has been going, Drake. Each season he's gotten a little bit better, from a pass rushing standpoint, went from 4 sacks to 6 sacks to 8.5 sacks, and while the pressure was down, he didn't pressure the quarterback at a particularly high rate, or a consistent rate, I should say. Boy, he proved how vital of a run defender he was last year. And that matters as a defensive end. You can't just have guys that go out there and try to sack the quarterback. You also need them to play the run. And Kwity Paye can do that. Kwity Paye is a very, very strong run defender. And he sets the edge very well at that big end. A lot of times he would stop guys at or before they got to the line of scrimmage. And I think that gets looked over quite a bit. So in my opinion, Drake, I think, first of all, before we dive into how this impacts, I'm really a big fan that the Colts picked up this 5th-year option for Kwity Paye. Didn't think they were going to, but sure as hell I'm happy that they actually did.
Yeah, and look, regardless of if fans are, a pro Kwity or anti Kwity, regardless, you're talking about a guy that, at the end of the day, to make this real brief, outside of pass pressure, what does he do bad? He really doesn't. He's a very complete defensive end. You could get more pass pressure from him. You could also get more from his fellow draft classmate, Dio Dangbo. Okay, you could get more from Grover Stewart. Okay, I know he only played 10 games, but look, man, you just paid that man. Get more pressure on the freaking passer. Okay, earn that money, earn that contract. He needs to improve in that area, man. But outside of that, Andrew, Kwity Paye is a run defender you must have. Okay. And then you got Samson Ebukam, who's fantastic at it too. And then a guy who's a rotational piece like Tyquan Lewis, who can also defend the run pretty well, even though he's fantastic at getting to the passer. So I think Kwity Paye is vital. That's the big word. I think it's vital. I like it. I think that a lot of people were against it, but look, the Colts feel like they can afford that $13.5-14 million. And you know what? It keeps him with Laiatu Latu. And guess what? It also helps his development too. So I like it. And if you can afford it without it putting you in ridiculous financial hell, go for it, because the more the merrier. With this kind of defensive front, you want to keep all the pieces you can for as long as possible.
And to that point, Drake, about affording it, the 5th-year option, $13.4 million, really isn't that expensive for an edge rusher in today's NFL.
That's fair.
Stats Matt has it right here. Kwity's option doesn't even make him a top 20 paid edge rusher in the NFL. And after some more extensions, it might not even be top 30. So it's really a good deal for the Colts, because top 30 defensive end, that's a starter. Kwity Paye's a starter in this league. Let's be honest here, and we haven't seen the final product for Kwity Paye. I do think he has the ability to take another jump, and if he gets double digit sacks, if say the Colts didn't pick up his 5th-year option and Kwity Paye goes out there, gets 10.5, 11 sacks this year and takes another leap, that price tag just jumped real high, because pass rushers that can get double digit sacks, I mean, that number goes up to, 17, 18, 19 million a year at least. So the Colts are betting on Kwity Paye to not only take that leap, but to stay at the level he is. So and they think that he can be a vital part of this future. So and I love this as well from Noah, which we'll dive into each one of these players. But good to see you, buddy. The Colts can recoup $8 million of that $13 million that's going to Kwity Paye for 2025 if they move on from Samson Ebukam after this season. Big competition between Paye, Ebukam, and Odangbo this season to cement who has their future in Indy. And Noah's exactly right. That's going to be a really good competition between all these three, and competition brings out the best in these guys. So let's talk about the impact of Latu on Kwity Paye. Drake, what do you think? How do you think it's going to impact, whether it's his snaps, whether it's Kwity Paye's role on this defensive line? How do you see things transpiring as we get close to fall? And we could be way off. These are way too early predictions probably, but just on knowing what Latu brings to this team, knowing what Kwity Paye has been to this team, and what he can still bring to this team, how do you expect things to play out when it comes to Kwity Paye this this season, since Latu is coming on board with the Colts.
All that it's been for Pay is can he stay healthy? Can he stay consistently healthy? And if he can do that, then it's just about, hey, figure out a way to get more pressure on the passer. And it's hard to find anything else that's a hole in his game. I mean, so I think that it doesn't really mean anything but good things. I mean, like they picked up his 5th-year option. You can already wash your hands clean of needing to worry about anything next season, okay? Because you're in year 4. So he's good this year. He's good next year. Great. Let that go. This is good for Kwity Paye. This is going to help Kwity Paye get to that 10 sack number that he's been looking for, okay? He had 8.5 last season, man. I think he was second on the entire team, you know?
Yep.
So you're talking about a guy that, yes, okay, some of those sacks were gimme sacks, but when you hear that and then you have to go back and explain this, the difference between the gimme sacks with him and the gimme sacks with Yannick Ngakoue were that Yannick Ngakoue's gimme sacks were almost purely because of the dominance of DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart just funneling a quarterback outside. And he was an awful run defender. Kwity Paye, a lot of times, like Andrew said, would set the edge. Every time and again, he'd be the Leo. But this is a guy who's I would dare say, damn near one of the best run defenders you can find at edge rusher. And all he's missing is that crucial component to make him just an overall badass player, and that is just consistent quarterback pressure. So I think Charlie Partridge, man, I think that's another thing that's going to benefit him. But Latu's just going to help. He's also going to help the rest of the defensive crew outside of the one guy he takes the position of. I think that he's got to fit somewhere on that depth chart, right? So whoever goes behind him doesn't benefit. But I do think that the people that are in front of him or that don't have their playing time changed too much, you're only going to benefit from more talent on the field. It's going to give you more opportunities as well.
And I think the Colts picking up Kwity Paye's 5th-year option is also a sign that they expect Paye to have a big role with this team,
true.
Not only this season, but next season as well. So this honestly, this move to pick up his 5th-year option, I think it definitely changes some things. It definitely changes some opinions about Kwity Paye. And what he's going to, his role with this team, because originally you don't pick up that 5th-year option. You're basically telling Kwity Paye, okay, go out there and prove it. Picking up his 5th-year option, well, he still needs to prove it, and he still needs to get better and produce more as a pass rusher. It's assurance to not only the Colts, or to not only Kwity Paye, but I think it gives assurance to that of his role with the team. So in my opinion, I think Kwity Paye is still the starter at big end, not only to going into this season, but I think he'll probably retain that through the whole season, unless something drastic happens, and unless the production goes way down, or Dayo Odeyingbo really ascends into a dominant edge rusher. But I think Kwity Paye is, from what I'm expecting another jump. Am I expecting Kwity Paye to turn into an All-Pro? I think that's unrealistic. Do I expect Kwity Paye, if he stays healthy, to add more pressure and to get 10 sacks? I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I really don't, Drake. I think that would be a fine mark. You get a guy that is getting, I think what was his pressure rate last year? I completely forget, and StatsMap might have to look up the numbers. But
he had 28 pressures on 410 pass rushing snaps. So that's like about one pressure per 13, 14.
Okay. And if he
pass rushing snaps,
and if he could even get it down to one pressure for every, 8 or 9 snaps, almost cut that difference in half. I mean, you're happy with that. Keep up the elite run defense and just pressure the quarterback more consistently, get home a little bit more. You take that. You absolutely take that. And that's a very solid, very good starting defensive end in the NFL. So I just don't think it's going to impact him that much. He might go down a little bit on some pass rushing snaps. Maybe they brought in Latu instead. But overall, I don't think the biggest impact is going to be to Kwity Paye. StatsMat says, I think we can expect Kwity to lose 10-ish% of snaps probably, unless injuries happen. So it's going to be interesting to see. Dayo Odeyingbo, on the other hand, I think his role is a little bit less defined. He's entering a contract year. He had a very good 2022. but Drake and Drake, I just don't know if he is as, I mean, the potential is there, but he's not. He's just not there yet. He's not as complete of a player as a Kwity Paye, and it doesn't have the, I would say, the upside or the polish of a Laiatu Latu. So before I dive in, what do you think Dio Dangbo's role is going to be? Because I know you are a huge fan of Dio Dangbo. You love his game. You've been really pushing for him. So how do you think this pick of Latu really impacts number 54?
When you love something, Andrew, you have to admit the faults, and you have to be okay with it. Or, you're totally lying to yourself. Dio is horrific in run defense. He's a super, just uber powerful guy that really missed his first season, due to his Achilles injury.
Right.
But he's got to get better in run defense. And I mean, it's bad. Like he's below average, but you can work with this. Okay. I think that a guy like Latu, again, the more you have to worry about in the NFL, the better it's going to be for what you're worrying about. Okay. Because you can throw even more things at an offense now that you have Latu. It's going to help Dio. But you have an uber strong pass rusher here that really Morocco Brown nailed it when he called him Hurricane Dio. He's just a disruptor. But he can also be placed on the inside. I think he played like 89, 90 snaps as a defensive tackle, basically. So I think that you will see him moved around a little more. I think that Raekwon Davis is a hell of a pickup. That's a better pickup than people think, especially – it's even better now that they re-signed Grover, because otherwise it's no ways he's starting. So I think that you still need more depth at defensive tackle. Maybe they swing him in there and see how he can, compete with Taven Bryan for some snaps, because I think that Dio still has a role. But I do think he is nowhere near as complete of a player as Kwity Paye yet. But I think that the potential is still there. But I think he's the one that's most in trouble out of the two, especially after, even – let's say that no 50-year option is even, put in play here. I still think Dio is less versatile, but the potential is outrageous. I mean, if he can line all that up, fantastic, but it's going to take a while. I think he's still pretty raw.
I agree, and I want to give you a shout out, bud, because I knew that Dio had struggled a little bit against the run last year, but I didn't know it was to the degree that it was until I read your article about Kwity Paye and Dio Dangbo and the impact this week. And then I went back and I just looked at some of the games. I went to Pro Football Focus and saw the games that he graded out the worst as a run defender, because as you guys know, we say, like I said, it's not the Bible, but Pro Football Focus is still a good resource to use. I turned on the film from those 3 games, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good from Dio Dangbo. Now it's all correctable. It certainly is all correctable.
A lot of it's technique and fundamentals.
A lot of it's technique. A lot of it's just more snaps, getting more experience. But I think for Dio Dangbo, I think that there might be a little bit more pressure on him, to improve than there is the rest, because, he is entering a contract year. You want to put your best foot forward. You don't want to take a step back. You want to make sure you're on the field as much as possible so you can get those stats, so you can impress, so you can make as much money, from a personal standpoint. Obviously he's a guy that if you know Dio Dangbo and you ask him what's actually on his mind, he really doesn't give a damn about any of that. He just wants to go out there and play football and win football games. But that plays a factor into all of this. So do I think that Dio Dangbo ends up starting next year? I think it would take a lot. I think he would have to really improve his run defense first to fully supplant Kwity Paye as the starter. But I don't think that I think this puts more of a roadblock into, as far as Dio Dangbo becoming a full-time starter on this defensive line with Laiatu Latu there, because, Latu's going to take some snaps where Dio Dangbo could fill in. He'd probably be the first man up for Kwity Paye or Samson Ebukam. That's no longer the case. Dio Dangbo is probably going to be the first man up for Kwity Paye still, but for Samson Ebukam, Latu has that unlocked, and Latu may even start over Samson Ebukam as we go throughout the season. We'll just have to see on that. So yeah, he's gonna have to definitely show that he has improved as a run defender, while also keeping up those pass rush production, keeping that up. He's kind of in the same boat as Kwity Paye, get a little bit more consistent pressure on the quarterback in those situations. But I do think that Dio Dangbo is still going to be the top one or two, depth piece on the offensive line, and almost like a semi-starter, because I do think he is still going to take up quite a bit of snaps along that defensive line. Now we get to Samson Ebukam. And this is where it gets interesting. As Noah talked about before, if they ended up cutting Samson Ebukam after the season, it saves $8 million. But again, Samson Ebukam just went out there and was your best pass rusher a year ago, 9.5 sacks. And Samson Ebukam it's not like he's saying, oh, I'm going to start slowing down now. He's probably wants to go out there and get double-digit sacks. So, but I do think that having Laiatu Latu there, and primarily, probably playing the Leo role, that's going to cut into Samson Ebukam snaps, I think, more than anybody else. It's going to cut in more than Kwity Paye, more than Dio Dangbo. I do think in those NASCAR packages specifically, that's where I think you're going to see the most snaps taken away from Kwity Paye, because Latu will be in that, and you'll have Ebukam on the other side. But the Colts want to get their rookie out there. And of these guys, Samson Ebukam is the oldest. I think he's 28, gonna be 29, something like that. So he's definitely the oldest of these pass rushers. And with things, just the way they started to play out, Ebukam, I think, is probably the one that's going to end up falling a little bit, and you're going to see him lose more snaps than the other two, just for one, because the other guys are younger and they still have invested a lot in those guys, and two, Latu's going to be playing that position and nipping at his heels. So I don't know. What do you think, Drake? I think that Ebukam still will be a big part of this defensive line. But in my opinion, he's going to be the one that takes the biggest hit out of the Latu pick.
Yeah. I think that we always have to say this, right? The NFL is a tough freaking business. There's a reason almost nobody in the world can do this stuff. So look, Ebukam just put up not only the Colts, arguably one of the best performances of any defensive player on the Colts. He led the Colts in tackles. He was second in quarterback pressures, and he had himself a career season. Okay, after being nothing but a rotational piece in the NFC East or NFC West, I believe. So I think that they're saying, look, man, we have you on a 3-year, $24 million contract. Go out and earn real money. Here's a young stud. Go out and work with him and keep up your level of performance, and we'll talk. I mean, the NFL is a hard business. Teams want to win Super Bowls, man. They want to put asses in seats. Fans want to win. They want the best possible talent they can get. And sometimes you have to take even talent that was high level for you, and you have to say, hey, guess what? Here's this new piece now. You guys go out there and let's see who's better. Or if we all hit the jackpot, both of you guys work out fantastic. So I think that Ebukam's role is going to be a lot to do with what Latu's development is. I think that, like you said, Odengbo is really Paye's backup for the most part. So they're really kind of on the same in the same depth chart slot. You're going to be looking at Ebukam fighting with Latu for the most part. But like we've also said, guys, these guys could be on the field at the same time with Latu's skill set and the way that he's versatile and the way that Ebukam can defend the run. A lot of ways this can go, but I agree with Andrew. I think that if you're looking at the most possible avenue for snaps to get taken because of this Latu acquisition, it's Samson Ebukam, man.
And that's a perfect segue of where we're going next with all of this. Charlie Partridge is going to play such a crucial role in all of this, Drake, because you just talked about it, because of Latu's skill set and how Ebukam, while he's a Leo, he's no slouch against the run. If Dio Dangbo and Kwity Paye take another step in that pass rushing department, you just have so many different options. And what was Charlie Partridge brought to the Indianapolis Colts to do? To put these young pass rushers in the best position to succeed. and so we very well could see a lot of different things that we haven't seen over the past couple of seasons because Charlie Partridge is here and Nate Ollie isn't. Like I mentioned, Laiatu Latu has some experience rushing over the guard as a three technique and a 2-point stance. We could see him do that. Do we see Dio Odangbo move inside more to bring out, to give him more snaps on those second and long, third and medium to third and long? You take Grover Stewart off, and instead of sticking a Taven Bryan in there, which by the way, at this point I don't even think Taven Bryan is going to make the roster. But do you put Dio Dangbo in that spot? You talk about the NASCAR package where you have Ebukam and Latu as the ends. You put Buckner and Odangbo in the middle, and then Kwity Paye is out in the NASCAR package. But there's also situations, where you could have Latu and Paye, which really could be the pass rushing duo for the future with the Colts. If Latu on one side and Paye on the other, I think ideally that's what the Colts would want, is those two being their bookends for the foreseeable future. So I think Charlie Partridge and him getting to know these guys throughout the spring and summer, throughout training camp, and really in training camp and in these preseason games, just testing these guys at different spots to kind of see where they work best. I think that's going to be the ultimate determinant, in who is going to lose snaps because of Latu, and where ultimately Latu is going to see most of his action.
Yeah, and look, the Colts have a good problem right now with their defensive front.
They do.
They have to figure out who the hell do we give snaps to. Like you have so much talent, and I think for the first time, Chris Ballard can sit there and go, you know what? I think we can have enough edge rushers. I think we can have enough pass rushers because they've got them. They've got them in spades. So I'm right there with you. I think there's multiple ways to approach this with Charlie Partridge, and everyone, we know that, the expectations, we're going with the hype in college and everything. He's never coached in the pros, but it's really the pros that have worked with Partridge that is the most important part. And forgive me or correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, but aren't we talking about JJ Watt? Aren't we talking about like some of the best pass rushers the NFL has that Charlie Partridge has worked with? And now you give him Laiatu Latu. All I have to say, if you're a Colts fan, is you should be saying, let's freaking go, because that's a great pairing.
JJ Watt, Trey Hendrickson, who Laiatu Latu has received a lot of player comps for, Kalijah Cansey. He's worked with a lot of very good NFL players. So it's going to be that's going to be the key to all of this, really, is what Charlie Partridge sees in each one of these players, what he sees their strengths being, and how he's going to use these guys up and down the defensive line. But finally, to kind of put a bow on this, Drake, let's do our way too early prediction on Laiatu Latu. What do you see his role being overall after talking about this? Let's just summarize it real quick. What do you see his role being in year one? And I guess the follow-up question is, ultimately by the end of his rookie season, is Laiatu Latu a bona fide starter for the Indianapolis Colts?
I think that you're going to, again, we're going back to the Colts have a good issue with too much depth right now at edge rusher. Guess what? One of the reasons it's a good issue is now you can just kind of see where Latu fits best. You can put in last year's starting lineup because you got Kwity Paye happy with a fifth-year option. You don't have to change a damn thing, man. And you get Jannard Avery back too, and maybe you want to throw him in the fray. Look, you can put Latu at the big end. You can put him at Leo. You can see where he fits. Then by about the mid-season point, then you've got a really good idea on what area he is just excelling in. Then I think you start seeing him take over some snap counts. And then I do believe by the end of the year, you will see him be a bona fide starter because, look, man, the Colts can't afford to just make this another, no expectations year. The Texans are building too damn quick. Okay, the Titans are building and the Jaguars are building. The AFC South, I swear, people, in 2 to 3 years, it's going to be a fucking war zone. And whoever comes out of there is going to be battle hardened for the playoffs. So I just think that, man, I think that by the end of the year, I think these are solid numbers. Let's go with 6.5 sacks, I think he's really going to impress in the run game. I think you're going to look at about 12 tackles for loss.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe more
Okay.
sacks, but I'm lowering my expectations. I don't want to put too much on the guy,
Okay. Yeah. And the thing is, I'm going to go higher than that. I do think Laiatu Latu will be a bona fide starter before the end of the year. I think he's just too polished, man. I think he's just too good of a pass rusher.
It's fair.
For the Colts to get the best, as Chris Ballard said, the best effing pass rusher in the draft and not to start him quickly, I just don't see it. I just don't see it not happening. And whether that is, I think it's probably going to end up being at Leo. I think Latu's going to take over for Ebukam. I think that Latu has the potential to come in quickly and get, I think, 9 sacks as a rookie, 9 or 10 sacks as a rookie.
Great.
I'm that high on him because his tape screams that. He went up in the Senior Bowl and absolutely dominated against NFL talent. Sure, it might take him a little bit, but I could also see him erupting for a 3-sack game, and end up getting, 9 or 10 sacks over a 12-week period. I really could. So I think Latu ends up as the starter by mid-season, I would say. I mean, obviously taking injuries out of it, but if he stays healthy, I think Laiatu Latu is the starter by mid-season at the latest, and I fully expect him to get 9 or 10 sacks right out the gate. I think he can be that productive as a pass rusher from the get-go, and I think the Colts have huge plans for Laiatu Latu, and you already know Charlie Partridge is scheming up ways to get this guy free and get this guy one-on-one to go get the quarterback. And we haven't even talked about it. Having the threat of Latu out there, if he starts taking on double teams because he is being such a menace as a pass rusher, who does that open things up for? Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner. So all the double teams can finally stop going to DeForest Buckner. And we may even see Buck, who got 8 sacks a year ago, basically with Ebukam on the other side as his only other threat. The only other major threat. Buck could get up to about 10 sacks as well. And finally, people can start talking about him as a top defensive tackle again, where he has been the entire time. But again, I do think that Latu ends up taking over the Leo spot. I think he gets probably about 9 or 10 sacks this season. Creates that extra, consistent pressure that the Colts need. And I think we are going to see quite a bit of a boost for this Colts defensive line as a whole.
Yeah, and again, last season they showed so much spark, man, and they really looked like a defensive front that was one big time player away from just taking off. This could be it, and I think that Ballard thinks this is it. I think that Partridge does. I think the Colts are far more pumped about this Latu pick, and I think we can look. We're speculating, right? He hasn't even played it down in the NFL, but the potential. It's just ridiculous. The potential, everyone, is that they beat their Indy sack record again this season with a guy like Latu. So we'll see what happens. Me and Andrew sure as hell are excited about it, so we hope you are too.
Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if the Colts got more than 51 sacks
That'd be great
this season and break it for a second year in a row. Drake, let's talk about the latest Colts news and rumors to close out our episode tonight. And guys, there really isn't too much to talk about. Just for a 37-minute video that the Indianapolis Colts production team released last night, absolutely hit it out of the park once again with Behind the Colts. Almost a 40-minute long video of what went into the draft. The Colts, it seems like they've done away with the name with the next pick. They just put it all into a 40-minute video, starting from day 1 to day 2 to day 3, and it was a fantastic video, really going in depth. The interviews with Ballard, with Steichen, with the scouts, showing what the coaches thought in those early meetings before the draft. It was absolutely fantastic. So Drake, as when you watch that video and everything that went into it, what were your main takeaways, whether it be from the draft, from the coach's reaction, whatever? What were your main takeaways from watching that and just getting that inside look, literally behind the Colts and behind what was going on throughout draft weekend?
Just so many things, but just to make it quick here, I loved Chris Ballard's reaction when they got Latu, because I remember when you announced it, when we were watching this live, you're like, I don't know how, to me and Noah Gabert, I don't know how you guys are going to feel about this one. And then I remember when Goodell's walking up there and I look at your face and you're going, like that. Like, it's like defensive end, but wait, cornerback, wide receiver. But when you watch, look, man, say your opinions about any one of these 32 NFL GMs. They know way more, they have forgotten far more football than you will ever research, know, read, anything. They are doing what they truly feel is the best move. And I haven't seen Chris Ballard that excited to get a player since he got Anthony Richardson. Okay,
Mhm.
so just loved watching his reaction and describing, what Latu can do for the defense and the whole reason, hey, number one guy on our board. He was the best defensive pass rusher in the draft. But I also loved the way that they trusted Adonai Mitchell, aka AD Mitchell. And then after this whole thing, after behind the Colts, we got to see Ballard defend Mitchell in one of the most incredible just tirades I've ever seen. And I remember watching the day 3 draft and Rich Eisen even goes, the Colts did pick up AD Mitchell when they were up. And then he goes, Chris Ballard, he goes, we see you and we love it. So it's like the belief in your player, fantastic. I just think that Colts fans really need to value Chris Ballard's openness, regardless of if you like him or not, and really give a lot of praise to the Colts production team because it's absolutely stunning work that they do, and it really gives you one hell of a perspective on just how much work goes into all this.
It's really great access, behind the scenes to see what this Colts team does. And I think the things that stuck out to me, I saw some fans, really criticize Ballard for not trying hard enough to trade up. You saw the Colts were on the phones for a good chunk of the
Dude,
first
they
10 picks.
tried.
They were really trying to move up. And it seems like once Rome Odunze went off the board, that's when the calls stopped. They saw that Odunze went, the top 3 wide receivers went, and they're like, okay, we'll kind of see what happens here. But as you saw the picks going down, it didn't take the Colts very long at all. Once they got on the clock at 15, they're like, yep, Latu's the pick. They had their sights on Latu. They as soon as he started to come down, the Colts were like, if he ends up being there at 15, we're going to take him. It showed that Chris Ballard in their meetings about Latu before the draft, they're all thinking, there's no way. We don't think this guy's going to be there at 15. So they got tremendous value for that. And then they did end up trading back in the second. And then they're like, let's talk about Mitchell, let's talk about AD. And this, you saw how much Reggie Wayne and especially Jim Bob Cooter pounded the table in those early meetings for Adonai Mitchell. They think this kid can be special, and to have that kind of faith in a player, Shane Steichen really wanted him. Jim Bob Cooter did, Reggie Wayne, all of the guys that went to that Texas Pro Day, they came away thinking, Mitchell's fantastic, and Mitchell just adds an element to this offense, not only with his physicality, his hands, his vertical presence, and as a deep threat, but his ability to separate at the top of his routes. And I talked about this. I've had some people on X call me crazy for it. I've had some people in the chat kind of raise some eyebrows. His route running reminds me of CeeDee Lamb. And if he can consistently do that, look out, because he's going to be an absolute menace for this Indianapolis Colts team. It also showed me that the Colts were really, moving to the 3rd pick, they were scared they weren't going to get Matt Gonzalez. They really, really like Matt Gonzalez. And that phone call to Gonzalez was fantastic. He is so fired up to be a Colt. In my opinion, you're looking at the starting right guard for the Indianapolis Colts in 2025 in Matt Gonzalez. They loved his fit, and they did not want to lose out on Gonzalez. So they are super pumped to have him and feel like he can be an asset for this team. Get his feet wet in the NFL this year, learn both inside and out, be a solid depth piece, and then probably in 2025, Gonzalez is going to be that starting right guard. But overall, the Colts really felt like they hammered, they hit a home run with this draft, especially the guys at the top. And you know what? If they all pan out and Latu can be a Pro Bowler, consistent Pro Bowler, Adonai Mitchell can take this offense to the next level, you basically are reloading the offensive line with guys like Gonzalez and Tanner Bortolini when Ryan Kelly ends up retiring, whenever that may be. that's about as good as you can ask for an NFL draft. So the Colts are pumped about this. I think Colts fans should be pumped about it, especially when you turn on the film of the first, 5, 6, 7 guys. Each one of these guys has a route to succeed in the NFL, and I think the Colts got some good ones, and they certainly feel the same way too. Now it's on the players, now it's on the coaches to get them in the right spots to succeed. It's on the players to go out and perform and take advantage of those opportunities. And I really to kind of put a bow on it, I really like what Mitchell said in his call to Ballard. I'm going to make you look like a genius, man. When he said he was pissed at the 31 other teams, and it sounds like he's going to try to go out there and make them pay. That could be dangerous for the rest of the NFL.
Listen to the similarities to that. So you've got AD Mitchell was pissed off, almost had like this, I am going to make the NFL pay for making me wait so long call with Chris Ballard. So did Josh Downs. Okay. Reggie Wayne pounded the table for Adonai Mitchell. He also pounded the table for Josh Downs. And then AD Mitchell's out here making, and anybody covering the NFL like us, Andrew, we're prisoners of the moment. I was like, Steichen, JBC, and Reggie are there to watch Xavier Worthy. That's who they care about.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, if they wanted Xavier Worthy, they would have traded back. They would have figured out a way to trade back if they really wanted him that bad. But it looks like they really wanted AD Mitchell. It just, when you look at the size, the route running, the crispness, the potential, don't get me wrong, Xavier Worthy is faster, he's more developed, he's more consistent, he's got more experience, blah, 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 blah. But after me doing plenty of research, I got to say, man, that you talk about the more complete product long-term, you might be looking at AD Mitchell having the higher, just probability to succeed on multiple levels. He does the route running well. He's got the size. He's got the speed. If it all hits for him, holy crap. And he's got Reggie Wayne. I'm actually very excited for the AD Mitchell pick. Love it.
Latu and Mitchell both have potential to be Pro Bowlers in the NFL. And if both of them hit their ceilings, I think that's an A+ draft for the Indianapolis Colts. So that's our show, everyone. Really appreciate everybody tuning in to talk about Laiatu Latu and the Colts pass rush this evening. And if you haven't done so, please go watch that video behind the Colts. It's on the Colts YouTube channel. It's on their Twitter or their X from last night. It's easiest just to go on YouTube and find it. Fantastic video. And for all Colts fans, I think you guys will really enjoy it, really enjoy that access. So no super chats this evening, but hey, want to give a shout out to everyone that joined tonight. It was a lot of fun talking Colts football. He still finished his drink. He still got a nice buzz going on. So yeah, exactly. Really good stuff. And one last stat of the day, or kind of stat, almost all the premier wide receiver picks by Chris Ballard have low drop rates in there. Yeah, I think Pittman's was super low, like 2.9% his last year in college. Josh Downs was like 3.1, and then Mitchell's was 1.8. All surefire hands guys.
Good for Anthony Richardson, man.
Very good for Anthony Richardson. So if you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, so you never miss an episode. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. Drake, go tell the people what they can check out on Horseshoe Huddle, because you've been writing away as always.
Yeah, man. A couple that I'm really proud of is the final. It's still fresh, man. Go check out the final grades from the entire Colts draft from 2024. And what does drafting Laiatu Latu mean for the other young pass rushers? Go check that one out too.
Definitely go check that one out. For myself, still been putting out stories about this draft class. I think since the last time we talked to you guys, I've got a piece out on Tanner Bortolini and how he wants to be the next great Wisconsin offensive lineman. Also got a chance to hear from Jalen, or JC, like he likes to be called, JC Carlisle, on his switch from safety to linebacker. Another guy that switched from safety to linebacker back in 2003, Cato June. worked out pretty well for the Colts linebacker and now assistant Colts linebackers coach, who will be right there with Carlisle as he makes the transition. And then tomorrow, guys, I've got another piece out, this time on the other Jalen Simpson. And he really went into depth about how he has a lot of confidence, and it definitely oozes out of Simpson. But he believes that the SEC and playing that top level competition there really prepared him for life in the NFL. It was interesting to hear from him. And I'll have a couple other pieces as well. Got to still get you the information on Micah Abraham as well as Jonah Laulu. So all of those pieces are coming on horseshoehuddle.com. So make sure you check those out, and everything else by our fantastic colleagues at Horseshoe Huddle. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back Monday night to talk more Colts football with you all, and maybe even talk a little Adonai Mitchell and dive in a little bit further on the wide receiver out of Texas. So, hey, maybe I'll be here, maybe I won't. We're still on high alert on baby watch, so we'll see. It might be Drake and another host filling in for me. We'll have to see at this point. But Colts fans, enjoy your weekend. Spend some time with your family and friends, and we'll be right back here on Monday night to continue more Colts off-season football with all of you. Enjoy it, guys.